Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual technology leadership meeting. I'm Eric Fiola. Today is Wednesday, May 13th, 2020, just in case anyone out there lost track of time. We have a lot of updates on the agenda this morning, and we'll get to all of that in just a few minutes. But first, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any questions as we move throughout today's webinar, we are monitoring the chat, so please send along any of those questions at any point throughout the webinar this morning. Also, if you signed up to receive PD credit through our My Learning Plan, we are going to record your attendance, but we also need you to drop your name in the chat. We see a lot of you doing that so far this morning. All right, so that's enough for me. We're going to get started now with our first update. Maria Rocker joins us now with some information about home access.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here this morning, and we're happy to join you to talk a little bit about the bits and bytes that are going on across the region. To kick us off this morning, we want to talk a little bit about home access. And this is a space where within the MORIC region, we have been providing a lot of support in terms of internet access, device access, ensuring that there is technical support in place and instructional support for the needs that are experienced at your local school district. In light of that fact, we've also been doing some statewide advocacy and some statewide partnership work to make this possible, especially in terms of our needs around the supply chain demands and the supply chain disruptions that have taken place. Just so you are aware, we also wanted to share a little bit with you around some work that NYSED is doing. So the New York State Education Department is going to shortly be sending out a survey to each individual school district to get some information and feedback around the home device access and home internet access that has been available to students throughout the pandemic. These questions will primarily focus not just on what the local district is doing, but also what is available within each of the students' homes that they have been utilizing to support in teaching and learning throughout the pandemic. This is all part of a long-term strategy and potentially some advocacy in New York State around meeting the needs of our teachers and students as we work through not just the current situation, but also what's coming in the summer and perhaps in the fall in terms of shifting what we do for education in support of our teachers, our students, and long-term teaching and learning.
All right, thank you, Maria. It's no surprise that the pandemic has forced us all to change how we function day to day in our schools, and we're all learning as we go. So if you haven't come across it yet, we do have a lot of new resources on our website. You can visit MORIC.org and you'll see a COVID-19 support resources banner right at the top of the page. You can also visit MORIC.org/COVID-19, and there you'll see a lot of documentation that supports continuity of learning, district operations, and telework resources. Everything from remote learning access to commencement planning and Board of Education meeting live streaming. We know a lot of you have reached out about many of these topics. There is some information on that site, so please feel free to reach out to any of us or visit the site MORIC.org/COVID-19. Before we continue, another reminder, if you have any questions, the chat is available, so please drop your questions there. One of the resources I just mentioned was about Board of Education streaming. A lot of people having meetings now planning for budgets. So we've received a lot of questions about how we can help you stream those Board of Education meetings online for the public to access. So for more now on that, here is Chris Schaeffer.
Since moving to remote operations, districts have had to adjust many procedures to meet their current needs. One consideration schools have faced is how to still effectively host their Board of Education meetings. Many districts have been working with MORIC staff to ensure both secure and effective public meetings for their Board of Education. Working with our staff, districts have been able to host meetings in the platform of their choice, while we then stream the meeting to the public in a secure way. By enlisting our help, districts have been able to hold meetings that comply with both new and existing public meeting regulations without creating any technological roadblocks for either district staff or the Board of Education members. MORIC staff will sit in on the public meeting to stream the event and help ensure the overall quality of the stream. And then we'll record the feed for public use after the fact. We'll supply the video recording as well as a text transcript of the meeting once the meeting is complete. If you're interested in obtaining our help, feel free to reach out to myself, Derek LaLonde, John Henry Lane, or either of the planners, and we'd be happy to get you some help. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box as well.
All right, thank you, Chris. Moving on now to another very popular question that we keep getting, and it's how we celebrate the class of 2020. With some options, here's Derek LaLonde.
Hey everyone, I'm going to review some of the virtual graduation options that are going to be available for our districts at the conclusion of the school year. So the first thing here is we have some documentation that if you haven't seen it yet, it should be coming to you very shortly with the options that are going to be available. So to kind of briefly talk about those, we have our option 1, which is the in-person live stream. So if you have done any graduation ceremonies with us in the past, it would be set up essentially the same way. There would be folks on site live streaming the ceremony however we decide to set it up with the district. Option 2 is a webinar style. So Jostens actually is offering a Zoom platform with some graduation templates built in to give districts the opportunity to stream a live graduation with some of the pre-created templates that they have available. So be sure to check that out. And then option 3, we have a social media style platform through a vendor called Herb Jones. This one is more of a kind of multimedia focused one where you can pre-record a lot of messages for graduates and be able to integrate a lot of those different kind of personalized pieces into a graduation type ceremony. So those are the 3 options that are available to the districts at the conclusion of the school year. And if you have any questions on those options, please feel free to reach out to Tracy or Martha, your tech planners here at the Mohawk RIC. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat.
All right, great, Derek, thank you. And as you saw scrolling at the bottom, the chat is available and we are monitoring that this morning. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them right there. As school districts across the country move to a virtual learning environment, many districts started to place orders for student devices, which caused some issues with our technology supply chain. So technology planning specialist Martha TORNABENE now has been checking in with our vendors and has that update.
Since March, we have been working alongside our school districts and our vendor partners to make sure that students and teachers at home had devices to utilize for e-learning. What began as our vendor partners updating us on a weekly basis of their supplies, back orders, as well as shipping, it became a communication daily. Since March, we are now into May, where in the beginning, our vendor partners were insisting that they would not have a replenished stock until late May, early June. But we have heard from our vendor partners. For example, if you're looking for Chromebooks, we have, with our vendors, we have in stock some HP models. There is 1 Dell model currently available. All others are on a 30-day back order or a 2 to 3 week lead time. Please reach out to Tracy or I or our purchasing office if you are interested in a specific Chromebook model or if you want to see which ones are in stock. Same with the Apple products, the iPads, the iPad minis specifically. More will be replenished in about 2 to 3 weeks. And the hotspots. So we have Kajit we've partnered with. We also have AT&T and Verizon. Again, please reach out to Tracy and I or the purchasing office directly if you still need some more devices and want the time frame on that. Now to Tracy.
And yes, thank you, Martha. Now we are going to stick with some purchasing and move over now to Tracy with an update on that. Hey, Tracy.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to take a couple minutes to share some of the purchasing requests that we've received in our office lately in hopes that they might help you. We do have BOMGAR licensing available for remote support. This will assist with trainings and any type of remote support that you could need for staff members that are off-site. We also have the VPN accounts to assist with remote work. So this account would be provided to a staff member that is working off-site that actually needs to log into their machine at the office and access their files. We have the hotspots available. Typically, we at the MORIC only support the Khajiit educational bundles, but because of the supply demand and some of the shipping delays, we decided to move forward and work with Verizon and AT&T to see what their offerings could be, and we're able to secure some of the hotspot devices for some of our districts. So there are options there as well. And then for the esports service, we have districts that are interested in starting an esports class in the fall. So we've been able to secure hardware for them, and some of the hardware bundles that we've been able to put together include the tower, the monitor, the keyboard, and gaming accessories. So if you have any need for any of those, certainly reach out to Martha and I, and we'd be happy to give you a proposal for those. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tracy, for that update. We're going to go back now to Maria Rocker, who has some news about technology procurement.
As we move into the area of procurement, we want to talk a little bit today beyond just the compliant contract conversation. Obviously, that will be a little bit of this as well, but we do want to focus on the larger procurement pathway to begin with. Because we have spent so much time talking about BOCES contracts, Regional Information Center contracts, we've talked about district contracts, we've talked about ClickWrap contracts, but today we want to dive into some of the procurement pathway information that we shared out in the MORIC newsletter last week. So that pathway really highlighted the 5 areas of procurement that need to take place within a local school district or at the BOCES and RIC level. In terms of those 5 areas, they're outlined on the slide before you, and they're also outlined in the document that was shared as part of the newsletter. If you didn't receive that, you are welcome to reach out, and I'm happy to share that information along with you. The first area, general municipal law, really focuses on the bid and non-bid purchases, and that really is defined by the threshold monetary requirement. So anything that's being purchased, whether it's hardware or software that's purchased by a local school district or by the RIC and BOCES, anything that's purchased over $20,000 does need to be managed through a bid. And for anything underneath that threshold, the Board of Education policy that's in place at your local school district or at the Regional Information Center and the BOCES defines what the threshold is for non-bid requirements and what those internal policies and procedures are for managing non-bid requirements. There are sources at the end of each page, you will notice. So if you need to reach out and get those links, you're welcome to do so, or we will share some of this information with you in our document that we've already shared out. The second piece are the New York State procurement guidelines, and these really are from the Office of the New York State Comptroller and the New York State Education Department. So each of them have document that they've shared out. So the first level is that general municipal law. The second level is about the New York State procurement guidelines from the Comptroller and from the New York State Education Department. And then there is an additional component for the Regional Information Center and the local BOCES around our cooperative service requirements. At the Regional Information Center, that also means that as part of administrative and instructional services planning, that we must do our 793 regional standardization process. So that is the second level summary. The next piece is the Board of Education policy that happens at each individual agency. And that policy must include these specific areas that are outlined in Section 104B of General Municipal Law. So that includes your non-bid purchasing, your bid purchasing requirements, your dollar limits, an annual review, who is actually qualified or who is actually responsible for purchasing within the local school district or the BOCES and the RIC. And then also the information around instructional resources and materials that need to be approved by the Board of Education. The fourth piece is around procurement methods. And this is really the way in which you purchase and procure hardware and software. And this is in 4 different areas. So you have your preferred sources, you have your state and centralized bids, such as OGS. You have your competitive bids that are managed either individually at local school districts or by the BOCES and the RIC. And then you also have the name in the bids for piggybacking, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to those compliant contract pieces in terms of the statewide contract consortiums that are in place to support the effective and efficient procurement. And then the last piece is sole source. And oftentimes we do see vendors trying to get through the procurement methods process by identifying themselves as sole source. But really, that really does come down to only one vendor supplies the products or services required. So for example, online video conference products are offered by several vendors. There is not one vendor, even if they say that there is, specific features that are unique to them. They are a little bit they are considered the same thing, even though they may have different features and functionalities that are built into them. The last piece is contract execution, and this comes down to the methods and the components that are within the procurement pathway for contract execution. Those methods include the OGS and centralized contracts that we use, the individual district contracts, not just the bids, but the next level of work, which is the contract. So the bids take place first, and then you execute a contract. And the piggyback contracts are part of the statewide contract consortiums that are leveraged by the RIC and the BOCES to support BOCES services and RIC services that are delivered in local school districts. And then the last piece are the contract components. So we have spoken quite a bit about this, and we've shared out some resources to support school districts as you begin to work through the contract component process, specifically the last piece after the master services agreement and your local legal best practice recommendations around that template for education law 2D addendum that was shared out across the region a couple of weeks ago. And that addendum still does need to be aligned with your privacy policy and including the signed Parents' Bill of Rights and supplemental information. So there's still a couple of pieces that if you do use the addendum, the template addendum that was shared, that you will still need to use the districts and build in the district's policy and signed Parent Bill of Rights. So the purpose behind sharing a lot of that is really around the different layers that exist around the procurement pathway. And it's not always as simple as negotiating a contract. Is this software compliant? Do I have a software contract? Do you have a contract for this? Do you need to have, can you create one for this? And a lot of times we have to actually back all the way up and think through that procurement pathway process and what bids have been completed, what contracts are in place, are they compliant with those different areas, and what does our Board of Education policy say, and then how can we go about, or can we go about procuring this through centralized and statewide contract consortiums models that exist. So the next piece of this that we want to talk a little bit about are those compliant contracts. And because we've shared this in great detail over the last little while, I don't want to go too in depth, but there are some pieces that still are questions that we have been receiving around these areas. So the first piece around the BOCES and RIC contracts, we still are working through that process of updating those contracts. We have put everything into motion, so most of those are being managed by addendums, and we'll talk through what that timeline has looked like. And then we are still leveraging those statewide bids and contract consortiums to support the BOCES and the RIC delivery of services. So if you do participate in our services and we offer them, then we work with our partners across the state to ensure that we do have contracts in place as part of those services. There is some misinformation out that's floating around in the state regarding the Parents' Bill of Rights, and that if a district participates in a BOCES service that leverages these statewide bids and contract consortiums, that the district still needs to include their individual Parent Bill of Rights and send it to the vendor, and that is not accurate. The truth is you really are participating in a BOCES service or a RIC service, and the Parent Bill of Rights and the contract that is in place automatically covers, as part of that cooperative service, the local school districts who participate in that. So if you do have questions around that space, you're welcome to reach out to me, but that is some misinformation that we've heard that we also want to clear up for you. And then the last piece are those compliant, responsible cross contracts. If we do not have something in place at the local RIC, and we've looked and scoured our statewide bids and contract consortiums that we participate with, then we also look for other sister RICs and BOCES who support those softwares that we can leverage to ensure that you're able to still receive the softwares that you want for your local district for teaching and learning. So those are a couple pieces that are out there. In terms of our regional bids and contracts, an overview of the timeline that does apply not just to MORIC, but also to your local school district is around the updates that need to be completed in order to put a contract in place after the proposed regulations became final regulations and were approved in January. So as part of that Education Law 2D update for contracts, the regulations were finalized in January. Step 2 of that was to update our data security and privacy plans to include a signed copy of the Parent Bill of Rights. And then we adopted our BOCES policy at a board meeting. And it is important to note that the vendor's data security and privacy plans must be consistent with the agency's policy. So any addendums that we're sending out, any vendor responses and contracts that are going to be in place have to align with that MOBOCES policy. And then we negotiate those contract addendums. We have sent out all of those contract addendums and a few new contracts that have been asked of us that are on the list. And we're working with those vendors to address requirements using the contract addendums. And then the final piece is that posting of supplemental information. And we've had a lot of questions about this, but we are still in May. And we anticipate that by the end of July, or I'm sorry, by the beginning of July, July 1, that we will have that supplemental information posted. And we will get that up there as we receive those finalized contracts and when they are approved. So you will see that slowly start to get built over time. So right now, this is where we're at in the process. We are at step 4, and we wanted to make sure that you have an update around that space because we do get a lot of questions about this. So some of the questions are also around where can I find out what contracts are currently accessible? And right now, the current contracts overview is that we expect that of the 207 contracts that we're negotiating for instructional softwares and the 62 management contracts that we're in the process of negotiating, 266 plus contracts softwares will be available as part of those contracts. Right now, the regional standards document is still posted out there from November of 2019. That may seem out of date to you, but it in fact is not. However, there are some, obviously right now, those check marks that are over on the right around contracts and 2D contracts that are in place are annulled at the moment. So we are also working through developing a new resource that we can share out with you around where we're at in those processes with those specific softwares that are being negotiated. So if, for example, we are anticipating that that contract is going to be in place by July of 2020, then there's going to be a checkbox in there, and this will be posted out on the MORIC website within the next week or two. This does not just include the ones that we are negotiating, but also it will include the contracts that we're working on with our statewide partners and sister RICs to put these contracts in place. So this is one piece that will be shared out fairly soon with you so that you can make also some purchasing plans. If there are softwares that are not included in here, that does not mean that they won't be negotiated in the future. This is simply where we are at right now. And we do anticipate that we will continue to update this and add new ones in as we move forward, even through the summer and into the fall with new requests that come in around contract spaces. And as we get bids completed or as bids are completed at the statewide level around categories of software and hardware for purchasing by local school districts. The next piece focuses on the district contracts, and just like we have in place this process or put in motion this process at the Madison Oneida BOCES and the Mohawk RIC, the same process needs to happen in the local school district around defining after those proposed regulations were adopted in January of 2020 and became final. Then the school district, the next step is ensuring that you review and update your Parent Bill of Rights, and then that you adopt a district policy and ensure that any contract addendums or addendums that you are sending out to vendors that you contract with directly, that the vendor's data security and privacy plans actually line up with the local district policy. And then you can go ahead and negotiate an addendum, which we have made a model for you, and that addendum has been made available in a couple of different ways. But if you do not have a copy of that, you are also willing and welcome to reach out to me, and I will be happy to share along that addendum with you. You may need to tweak it a little bit for your local school district, and it will certainly need a copy of your signed Parent Bill of Rights to go with it. And then the last piece, the post supplemental information. You certainly can use the RIC1 system inventory to manage contract requirements and to keep track of your software inventory. We did a webinar of that last week and shared out how to get access to that with data protection officers and with a few other audiences who were able to connect that day. There is a recording of that Martha and Tracy are going to highlight a little bit later in this presentation. In terms of that contract addendum applies to district contracts that you have in place. It can also apply to ClickRep contracts that you want to put in place. This addendum is unique in terms of us being able to share this model along with you, but we were happy to be able to do that. One thing about ClickRep agreements as well is that specifically in the area of free softwares, there have been a lot of questions that have come up around Google opt-in agreement and the Zoom opt-in agreement. And you are certainly able to get access through the Regional Information Center to the Google opt-in agreement that was shared out by the technology planners at your annual district planning meeting. If you have not returned that, you are certainly welcome to do so and share it along with Martha and Tracy so we can connect in with our with Western New York, Rick, that you have signed off on that. The second piece is Zoom, and that is available through the Regional Information Center through the Distance Learning Consortium. So if you do want to participate in the Zoom opt-in agreement, you are welcome to reach out to Martha or Tracy to get a copy of that and then send it through your normal district process internally to have that approved. Right now, the Zoom opt-in agreement gets you accounts through the regional instance for free until the end of June. And then after that, there will be a cost associated with that licensing. So that is it around our compliant contracts. And the last piece that I just want to talk through briefly with you is a reminder around those service inquiries and requests that you have. And we're hoping, and I'm hoping that by sharing a little bit of the procurement pathway and some highlights with you about what that looks like, that as you reach out and request new softwares and resources from Martha and or Tracy, that you have these answers in mind, because they are going to ask them when you reach out for new services, what your timeline is, because if we don't have immediate access to it locally at the RIC, then we want to be able to work with our sister RICs if there's a cross contract available, or if you can purchase it through CLO, or if just how we can actually go about getting you this resource. And depending on how you plan to use it, is there something similar that's already in place? And I know often we go out and we find what we think is the perfect thing, but there are a limited amount of resources to get all of the perfect things in place, and we're doing our absolute best to scale this work, but we also want to make sure that we're leveraging the tools that we have access to right now. And so be sure to share along how you're planning to use the product and what you're trying to accomplish with it, so that we can ensure that we have some solutions in place for you. And then the last two pieces about comparable and contract, we're happy, obviously, again, to reach out. So let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to respond in as quickly and as positively as possible to those requests. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions regarding the procurement pathway, you are invited to reach out to me. Let me know if you have any questions. And just one last quick piece before we move into next questions. There are a couple of pilots that have been taking place over the last couple of months. We do anticipate moving forward with Parent Square for the 2021 school year. There will be a contract in place, and we're also moving forward with mobile device management with Jamf. These still have to go to 793 governance, which was a little bit delayed because of our current landscape, but we anticipate that following that conversation, we will have contracts in place and districts will be able to move forward with purchasing. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions to Martha or Tracy, and they will connect back with you. As always, if you need anything in the course of this presentation, you're welcome to drop a quick question in the chat. I'm happy to answer them, and thank you.
All right, Maria, thank you. A lot of great information about procurement and contracts. If you do want to review any of the information that Maria just talked about, we do have this video that will be posted on our video site, moric.org/video. Our YouTube channel there has a lot of great resources, previous technology leadership meetings, as well as professional development resources for teachers. So be sure to check that out, moric.org/video. Next up, the MORIC is currently working on implementation plans for an enhanced regional email security solution. So Dan Potter now is going to take us through that process with MIMECAST. Dan?
So today I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about email security implementation, where we are in the process, how things are going, and what the timelines look like moving forward. So just a brief background on email security and the landscape that we're currently facing. 60% of organizations last year have seen an increase in impersonation attacks. I know that we've seen that throughout districts. We've had several attempts to steal payroll and have it sent to different places in districts. So that increase is based in real world numbers. Some of the other statistics that are out there, 54% of organizations saw increased phishing attacks. 41% of organizations saw increased in internal threat and data leaks. And one of the biggest stats in here that I think all of us can relate to is 88% experienced email-based spoofing of email addresses with people pretending to be staff members and/or business partners. So just as kind of a refresher, I wanted to mention some of the key features of MIMECAST, some of the reasons why this product was chosen, and some of the feature sets that are available to all of the districts under this. So the key features of MIMECAST include virus and spam protection, DNS authentication, and advanced reputation checks, multi-layered malware protection against known and zero-day threats. It rewrites all the URLs that you want it to, and so that when somebody clicks on it, it prevents malicious URLs and email attachments. Some of the other things that it does is it does an analysis of internal and outbound URLs, attachments, DLP checks. It rechecks files every single time you click on the file and or the attachment link to make sure that that file is still valid and safe to be opened. It remediates malicious and undesirable mail. In some of the email systems that you all have, it will do it with a one-click remediation. So that means if a bad email somehow makes it through the system and you want to remove it out of the system and out of all the end users' mailboxes, you can do that with a click of one button. Some of the other things that it does, or that we should mention of note, is it is centrally administrated through a single web-based council. It is web-based, and it does work with all of the district's existing email solutions. So the next part is just to quickly go over the implementation process. About 2 weeks before your district is ready to be slated for implementation, Martha or Tracy, whoever your planner is in that district, will be reaching out to you to coordinate the implementation plan. After you've confirmed that and a timeline is set, we'll sending districts some implementation documentation and confirm some items with the MORIC implementation team. During this process, districts will also receive documentation to send to their staff with features and or screens or emails that your staff members may see that they may not be accustomed to seeing. So just a quick kind of rollout of the implementation plan and the steps that we kind of go through this plan for each district. The step one is DNS routing and configuring outgoing mail through MIMECAST. So we do this first so that MIMECAST can learn the behaviors of outgoing mail within your district. There is absolutely no downtime to this, and we have yet to experience any issues cutting over outbound mail to have it flow through MIMECAST. We'll leave that running for about a week or so, monitor it, make sure that we're not seeing any issues, and then we'll move on to the second step, which is scheduling the synchronization between your directory services, normally your Active Directory, and or MIMECAST, so that we can make sure that those two are synced up and the users are imported into the MIMECAST system. The third step is we'll enable journaling on your system so that we can be monitoring those internal mails back and forth, and they'll be able to start recording those and journaling all those mail records. That will also coincide with the DNS routing inbound mail step one of that process, which is setting up a test account that will configure to test inbound mail just through that one account that we determined previous to this, to make sure that mail is flowing appropriately inbound into your district. The final step will be cutting over internal mail coming inbound, and that will take about 10 minutes to implement, but then there's going to be some fine tuning, some validation testing. We may have to make some exception to policies depending on how certain things are configured in your district, and make sure that attachments that your end users want to receive aren't being blocked, or that there's not some strange mail configuration that we need to make tuning of the policies for, so that those things aren't being blocked in your district and all your users are receiving the email that they're expecting to receive. In this page, I'm just showing real quick a sample of a couple of documents that have been created of our team that will be sent out to you to pass along to your end users. So one of the features of MIMECAST is end users will have a personal portal where they can go in. They'll get an email on a daily basis that'll basically show them the addresses of emails that have been blocked within the district for them, and what addresses they're coming from. They'll have a choice to accept that message, and then it will come into them to always accept the message, so that from this point on, it's not blocked as spam. So it's just another layer of a spam filter that is offered through MIMECAST, where the end user can actually pick and choose which things that they feel are spam or which things they don't feel are spam. Obviously, just from low-level spam filtering that doesn't include things like infections or malware or any of those things. Even if they accepted one of those messages through, it would warn them again and basically prevent them from opening those type of attachments. And then some of the other additional pages that you may see, options for quarantine emails and link safety warnings. If you go to click on a link that is deemed shortened and or unsafe, it will give you a warning message basically asking you, are you sure you want to do this? Even if you say yes and it is a bad link, it will then still not open the link for you. So it kind of has a little bit of training baked in for the end users, where if there's a link that may be deemed dangerous, it will ask them beforehand, are you sure you want to? I just wanted to kind of give a couple quick examples of pages that you may see towards the end of the deployments. So the plan right now is that we'll deploy all the districts onto this email solution. Chris and Derek are getting training ready, and we'll be providing that to district technical contacts in every district, so that they can be trained on how to manage their own portal moving forward sometime in July or August timeframe. Once we have all the districts deployed, we'll create accounts for those individuals. You'll go through your training, and we'll show you how to fine-tune things down in your district, add exceptions to individuals, or allow things or disallow things based on your own district needs. So every district will have their own personal portal that they can go into that will control their email and their end users' email experience. So here's just some example screens of like what a message detail screen and some of the information that would give you. Again, it has URL filtering. This is just showing you basically what the initial URL would be, or the original URL would be before it was scanned by MIMECAST, so that you could go in and see if was there a problem with that specific URL. The next screen that I'm showing you right now is a screen about held messages. That screen is a one-stop. You can click in here, see messages that are being held for individual users, look at why they're being held, and determine whether or not you want to release those messages to end users. And then this very last page that I have is just one of the many pages that are of policies that you can put into place within this email filtering system. And this includes, you know, everything from anti-spoofing to bulk email sending to blocking specific senders, specific countries, specific IP ranges. So there's a lot of customization in this solution, and there's a lot of flexibility for the individual districts to detail some of these policies around their specific needs within their district. Again, we're not going to be rolling out the district portal piece until approximately end of July, beginning of August timeframe, maybe a little later than that, depending on any issues that may arise during the deployment process. But we want to make sure that we have everybody deployed, ready to go, and everything is working as intended. And then we'll open it up to the district trainings and get you guys in there so that you can start making some changes. But I want to make sure that we're ready and prepared to support you in any of those scenarios. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box or email me directly. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thanks.
All right, Dan, and thank you. Again, a lot of good information about email security and MIMECAST. We do see some questions coming in on the chat. Feel free to continue to put those there. Dan and Maria are monitoring that chat right now. You can also reach out to Dan Potter, dpotter@moric.org, with any specific questions about your individual district's implementation. Since our last technology leadership meeting, we have welcomed some new staff members here at the MORIC. Martha is back now to introduce us to the newest members of the MORIC family.
We'd like to take a moment to introduce you to a few staff members who have joined our team at MORIC. First, we have Karen Hinderling and Stephen Shore. They both work with our managed IT team. Karen is an educational technical leader, and Stephen is a technician. We also have Katie Harp. She works within our administrative systems team. And Rebecca Krasko, who also works for our technical team. Welcome. And now to Tracy.
We'll get to Tracy in just a second. Thank you, Martha. And again, welcome Karen, Stephen, Katie, and Rebecca. We're happy to have you here as part of our team. And even though we can't all be together in person, we are glad that technology like this is keeping us connected. We have a lot more planned for this spring, and for a look at those upcoming events, we do go now back over to Tracy.
Okay, and now I'll take some time to share with you some of the regional events that we've put together. The first one I want to talk about is actually a past event. Last week on May 6th, we held the System Inventory Tool webinar, which focused on the new RIC-1 System Inventory Tool. This tool will help with NIST cybersecurity standards, as well as just keeping track of what softwares you have in your district. We did record this webinar, so if for some reason you weren't able to attend, please reach out to Martha or myself, and we'll be sure to get that link for you. A couple of upcoming events that we have, May 13th, we have an Opals user group, and that is going to be held from 1 to 2:30 in the afternoon. So you can join the library automation staff as well as MediaFlex for this user group, and it will highlight some of the features and future enhancements of Opals. On May 14th from 10 a.m. to noon, we have Taking a Deep Dive into Data. This was a monthly segment that the data team put together, and this month's topic is evaluating your current data plan and creating a 2021 plan. May 19th, we have Gamification in the Classroom from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. So you can join the instructional team and they can talk to you about esports if you're interested in putting a team or a class together this year. And they will discuss some of the core concepts of game-based learning, along with some techniques and tips that might help you out. On May 26th, we have the Parent Square regional demo, and that is from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Parent Square is a communication tool that is used to streamline many different tools into one. So if you're interested in that, please join us at 10 a.m. May 28th, we have the Envision year-end processes in accounting. And then May 29th, we have the Envision year-end processes and payroll. And those are both from 10:30 to 11:30, again, the 28th and 29th. And you'll hear about some future enhancements that they have coming up and learn some tips and tricks for the year-end processing in both of those categories. And the last thing I want to talk about is the scheduled maintenance reminder. We have May 27th and June 24th scheduled for that maintenance, which occurs between the hours of 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. If you have any questions on any of these, certainly feel free to reach out. And please remember to register on the MORIC PD calendar, which then you'll be sent a link for all of those trainings. Also a reminder that we are working on scheduling some virtual summer trainings and meetings, so be sure to look out for those.
All right, thanks, Tracy. And now we are going to go live to Ryan, who is joining me from somewhere across the internet with some updates, Ryan, right, on data security and system inventory tools.
Yep, thanks, Eric. So just wanted to provide you an update on a system inventory tool that we're able to now offer to the region for basically free of charge. It's kind of rolled into the regional data security service that all districts buy into. So the idea behind the tool is to help you manage your system inventory and help with the collection of the supplemental information for your parents' bill of rights. So we've talked kind of in the past about the need for system inventory. We have here the 9 components that are required of school districts, as we've broken them down for you a few times under Education Law 2D and Part 121. And specifically, we are focused on the 2 boxes kind of in the middle there, the NIST cybersecurity framework and third-party contracts, both of which have strong foundations in collecting an accurate system inventory, as well as collecting some information related to the inventory, as well as the contracts for the systems within those inventories. So we're going to take a look at both of these buckets just a little bit and see how this tool can help us out in these areas. So right now for the NIST cybersecurity framework, as we've talked about in kind of some past meetings, kind of one of the foundational components is having an accurate understanding of the information you have in the systems that you manage and knowing what those systems are. So right now, many districts are keeping track of that information in a number of different ways by utilizing QWare, SolarWinds, different spreadsheet technologies, and kind of systems to, related to those, and could be all sorts of disparate systems. And as it relates to third-party contracts, they're probably using similar tools, but we'd like to try and add in the system inventory tool to kind of fill some of that void as it relates to tracking third-party contracts related to the systems you're using to aid in the collection of your supplemental information. So I think that's really where we see the system inventory tool filling a niche. It may not replace the entirety of your other system inventory processes as they're needed for the NIST framework, but it will help you with your third-party collection, contract collection processes. So the idea here is basically the RIC 1 team, which is a combination of all the RICs across the state, have come together to basically internally build a system that lists a number of products that school districts use across the state. There's over 2,000 products that exist in the system right now. So the idea would be selecting the products that you're using within your district, adding them to your inventory, and then being able to add your supplemental information documentation to those products for posting on your district website. So to just briefly talk about the requirements under the law as a refresher a little bit, districts are required to post their Parents' Bill of Rights that talks about some of the information, as you can see on the screen here. In addition to that, districts are required to post supplemental information for those contracts outlining things such as how data is secured, how data is destroyed upon when the district's no longer using the product, the purpose for use of the contract, etc. So posting that information is a requirement on the district's website along with your Parents' Bill of Rights. So in order to make that available for your parents to be able to view, districts kind of have to create documents, maybe something in a format, something like this, listing the contract or the product, and then kind of those descriptions of those particular buckets that we talked about a few minutes ago. So then the objective would be to take all these documents and how do we get them compiled together and being able to post them on our website to be able to be viewed by our community. So the inventory tool would generate a list, something like this that you see before you, and you're able to click on the individual links and see the supplemental information. So you can link directly to this page from your school website that would list your district inventory as well as the supplemental information that you've compiled for it. So we'll take just a quick walkthrough of what the core functionalities of this tool really is at a high level. As we mentioned before, there's a recorded webinar related to this that we offered last week. And we'll also be, in the future, creating some more detailed instructional videos that you would be able to view, and we'll have those posted on our website. So in the core functionality, as I said, you'd be able to select any one of the systems from the list that exists within the tool. In this case, we've chosen School Tool, and you'd be able, there are a number of fields in there that you'd be able to put in a lot of the requirements that are needed for system inventory, as well as for tracking, the software for your needs. So the important pieces of system inventory are listed kind of there on the right side of the screen. What the system name is, the vendor, the system type, implementation scope, et cetera, et cetera. And the bolded ones are kind of areas that you'll be able to take care of within this tool. Also, as part of your inventory, you're going to want to keep track of criticality of different systems, required uptime, and a lot of the data integration workings and things like that. So those will be, at this point, those will need to be maintained in spreadsheets or systems outside of this system. We're always looking to add functionality to this, so hopefully we can get some more of that detail in here for a full-fledged inventory tool. But for right now, it's focused on those top points for of what you're able to track for your inventory. Then as we scroll down towards the bottom of our page, you're able to list, who's the administrator of a particular product. But the real kind of meat and potatoes of this is the supporting documentation at the bottom. So that's where we're able to upload those documents, or link to, I should say, those documents that you've created for, or that you are creating for supplemental information. So this will be your repository for those documents, being able to link to them here. And that will be what enables them to show on your supplemental information page. So you may want to include things like your MSA or your master service agreement, the contract for the product, the signed Parents' Bill of Rights that you have with the vendor, as well as the supplemental information documentation, a data security and privacy plan, if that's appropriate, that you have with the vendor, and those types of documents. So you have control over, if you upload all those, you have control over which ones you're able to post and not post on your supplemental information page. So as I said, the supplemental information page or your Parents' Bill of Rights page will look something like this. You can click on the little eyeballs and links there to take you to your documentation that you've uploaded and for parents to be able to view for transparency and compliancy purposes. And so you would click on that, and it would be essentially linked to any documents that you've uploaded for those products and chosen to display in this case. So the last piece, just wanted to give you some quick bullets and reminders. We went through it rather quickly. So again, this is available to all MORIC districts at no additional costs. You know, it's part of, as I said, the Regional Data Security Service that all districts are a part of. There will be instructional handouts available to you. It's just a kind of a quick instruction sheet over what the different fields do and look like and things of that nature, general software navigation and logging in. We'll be putting together an instructional video coming soon. Until that point, you're welcome to view the recorded webinar, which you're able to contact us and we can provide you any links for that until our video is released. And the last piece is, how do we get access to the tool? If you are your district's technology coordinator or your district's data protection officer or superintendent, if you'd like to have them request it, can email Brian Rondo. That's BRONDEAU @MORIC.org. He's a security specialist on my team, and he can get you set up with an account and get you access into the system. So if you have any questions, kind of as always, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get back responses as soon as we can. And I'll throw it back over to Eric.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Again, a lot of good information. Email Brian. His information and all of our contact information is up on our website at MORIC.org. That wraps up our virtual technology leadership meeting for this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. This video will be posted on our YouTube channel, MORIC.org/video. If you have any final questions, we are going to leave the chat open for just a few more minutes. But as always, as I said, if you think of anything later, please reach out to anyone that presented today or any member of our MORIC leadership team. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.